What do you think, Liam? What am I supposed to think? I think you look nice, Liam answered. Lady Beaumont's delighted response suggested that he had provided the right answer, but something told him that it was the wrong answer at the same time. The young noblewoman twirled in place, her winter-themed skirts swirling out to expose her stockinged calves. Liam's eyes went to the unpacked belongings strewn about the drawing room of the Countess Solar. Are we ready to get going, my lady? Not yet, Lady Beaumont replied. I've sent some men to call ahead, and we must wait for him to return. In the meantime, we should take the opportunity to relax. Shouldn't you prepare as much as possible for these meetings? Liam asked. I have been preparing for them since we left Beaumont Town to visit the mining villages, the Countess answered. Much of that preparation has gone up in smoke along with half of Bloomrussia. There's nothing else you can do? The young noblewoman tilted her head curiously, lightly touching the tip of her finger to her chin. Speculate? As reliable as they have been, our woodsmen aren't ideal for gathering information in the city, and the atmosphere in general has been subdued. What about the rare materials we brought with us? Lady Beaumont put on a troubled look. She glanced at the aforementioned materials piled in the nearby dining room, smoothing her skirts nervously. You think someone will mess with you? Liam asked. I know someone will, Lady Beaumont said. The part that keeps me fearful is that I can't predict how. My studies as a scion didn't cover the particulars of these pedestrian transactions. It's something our retainers usually took care of. He had to admit that it was an unknown to him, as well. According to the Countess, one could submit a request to the Adventurers Guild to have the materials assessed. Alternatively, one could go to the Merchant Guild for the same service, but it was pretty much mandatory to take advantage of the Adventurer Guild's muscle in Bloomrussia. As far as Liam's experiences went, valuable materials conveniently disappeared into the hands of those in power in Facet Town, and the Sorceress Kingdom's Adventurer Guild was no longer the organization it once was. If that's the case, Liam said, why not have your retainers deliver the materials for assessment and sale? I'm afraid they're as clueless as I am when it comes to dealing with the Adventurer Guild, Lady Beaumont replied. Is the Bloomrussia Adventurer Guild known for cheating its clients or compromising them in some way? Liam asked. Not that I know of, the young noblewoman sighed. Fine. I'll send Claire along with Reed, but could you please go along with them to ensure nothing goes wrong? She must have been incredibly worried if she was willing to give up her time alone with him. Claire left to summon Reed, who arrived with a half-dozen men to move the materials out of the room. What do I do, exactly, my lady? Reed asked. First and foremost, Lady Beaumont answered, make sure everything arrives at the Adventurer Guild safely. Claire will speak with the receptionist. Liam went to help move the materials while the Countess went over her expectations with her maid. Outside, Reed had rolled out a covered wagon and stationed half of his men to stand guard over it. No told me that being an armsman was so stressful, Reed grumbled. What part about it is stressful? Liam asked. Any part where I'm put in charge of making expensive shit safe, Reed answered. The most valuable thing I've escorted before this was a boatload of cheap wine. You seemed pretty relaxed on the way here, Liam noted. The woodsman scratched his chin. Guess you're right about that. It's gotta be the city. Feel all out of sorts here and half of everything makes no sense. Just focus on what you're good at, Liam said. Even in the city, your senses are still way better than the average person's. The job here is to protect the cargo and come back with the payment intact. Claire will handle the rest. Why is that girl handling the rest? Reed asked. Probably because she's the only civilian staff member of the Beaumont household right now, Liam answered. Normally, it'd be a butler or at least a footman doing this sort of work inside the city. Just remember what I told you about how a noble household operates and we should be fine. He at least hoped it would be the case. Routine procedure or not, they were sitting on top of a lot of expensive shit, as Reed so eloquently put it. Liam didn't foresee any problems delivering the materials, but word of such a lofty transaction would almost immediately get out. While the Adventurer Guild might have claimed impartiality when it came to disputes between humans, adventurers just loved to banter and gossip. The chance of them keeping their mouths shut about such a notable event was pretty much zero, making everything a race to get what they needed before someone else got in their way. On second thought, Liam said, "Be careful on the way back. Coin is easier to steal than all this bulky stuff." Aha. Liam left Reed and his men to finish securing the wagon while they waited for Claire to show up. As the minutes passed without any sign of the maid, Liam returned to Reed, who had taken up the driver's seat. "Did any of your guys go out into the city last night?" "Nah. We were exhausted from the trip. Probably better off asking Olin's boys, they hardly did any work for the last week. By the way, I don't think they're much like us anymore." "Us?" "Me and my men," Reed said. "I mean, they were never nice to us, but they still saw us as one of them in that stuck-up way of theirs." "Do you still want to be a part of their group?" Liam asked. "Even if we were just useful thugs, it's not as if we suffered under them. We were with them for a long time, it's a shock that they could change their tune so quick." It didn't seem all that strange to him. Countess Beaumont had a point about the difference between urban and rural society in the kingdom. In particular, vagrants such as spares and unskilled laborers eking out a living in urban centers didn't have the same relationship as rural tenants did with their lords or artisans did with their guilds. Their priorities lay along the lines of day-to-day survival and that demanded a moral outlook that those who enjoyed membership in one establishment or another would find distasteful. Loyalty was a weakness in a world where yesterday's friends could very easily be today's enemies. The dynamic between Reed's group and Olin's thugs portrayed the differences quite well. "You didn't answer my question," Liam said. "What question?" Reed frowned. "Oh. I'd prefer the more reliable option. Right now, that seems to be working for House Beaumont. Is being a retainer enough, or do you want land?" "A tenancy would be nice for sure," Reed replied, "but that might be asking for too much." "Why do you think that?" "Because it's land, yeah?" The woodsman said, "The only way to get more is to carve out a piece of the frontier. That involves driving out whoever lives there and having enough coin for development." "Well, the development part wouldn't be so hard, I'd just like a nice little plot of woodland to raise a family on." "That doesn't sound unreasonable," Liam said. "You guys just helped thin out the frontier last week." "Yes, though. Sorry for the wait." Claire emerged from the manor's front door, dressed in a maid's uniform that had been dug out of storage. She cast a dubious look at the overcast skies before flipping on the hood of her mantle and walking out to join them. "Did Lady Beaumont give us some other things to do?" Liam asked. "No, she wasn't satisfied with how I wore my uniform. We fixed my hair, too. What do you think?" The maid stood shyly before him. Her mantle covered pretty much everything, so he couldn't offer much in the form of constructive criticism. "I think you look nice," Liam said. Claire's beaming smile threatened to drive away the heavy clouds hanging over the city. For the second time that day, Liam wondered whether his answer was as safe as it seemed. After helping Claire climb onto the driver's seat beside Reed, the wagon proceeded at a careful pace out of the Beaumont estate and through the upper city. Liam had familiarized himself with the layout of Rebloom Russia overnight, but the daytime activity he now hoped to observe was scarce. They passed a grand total of 2 maids and 3 times as many footmen before reaching the entrance to the lower city. The sentries at the gate nodded to him as the wagon slowed to pass through the gatehouse. "Good morning, footman." "Good morning, Captain," Liam replied. "Were there any problems delivering the rent last night?" Lord Reginald tallied the numbers as soon as everything arrived at the castle, the sentry captain replied. He was in a good mood for the rest of the evening. "House Beaumont is glad to be of service," Liam said. "We can only wish Lord Reginald the best of luck with this monumental task." "It will be a monumental task indeed," the sentry captain sighed. "By the way, what are you carting out here?" "A variety of forest products that need to be assessed," Liam said. I believe the offices in the main plaza are still open. They are. I strongly suggest using the Adventurer Guild over the Merchant Guild. Ever since Lord Reginald expressed his resolve to personally oversee the city's reconstruction, we've been plagued by various forms of resistance from those filthy merchants and their affiliates. That's what my lady suspected, but it's good to hear confirmation from House Beaumont. Have a good morning, Captain. And you, footman. The sentry captain signaled for the portcullis to be raised. Common folk materialized as the resulting racket echoed down the scorched streets. The gatehouse staff immediately acted to disperse the gathering crowd. "This is as far as we can cover for you," the sentry captain called out to them. "I hope you and your men are ready to keep the riffraff at bay." Reed guided their wagon through a path forced open by the city militia. He urged their horses to a trot as they tried to stay ahead of the desperate throng. "Spare us some bread. Food, please. My family has barely eaten since the fire." "Work, does your lord have any work for us?" The people's pleas pelted them from all sides as they rushed to the main plaza. Liam struggled to maintain his cold expression as their cries washed over him. What in the world is House Bloomrush thinking? If Re Bloomrusher was ruled by House Bloomrush, then they should have been taking care of their people. Instead, the notorious house seemed intent on letting hardship cull the population. At best, the move could be considered along the same lines as Countess Beaumont's cold calculations. Some degree of starvation was inevitable, so the nobility prioritized the preservation of industry over all else. Food and fuel were necessary for survival and a speedy recovery, so the tenants of the rural territories received preferential treatment. The skilled artisans in the towns and cities would probably get by since they made enough to live comfortably under normal circumstances, but everyone else would struggle to make it. In the Azalisian frontier alone, tens of thousands would be buried by winter's end, but the perpetual influx of spares from its territories would see those numbers quickly replaced. To House Bloomrush, and perhaps many of its vassals, starvation was a convenient, self-correcting mechanism that cut short-term costs. All they had to do was be stronger than any potential uprising while it worked its deadly magic. "Looks like we made it," Reed said. Ahead of them, a different group of armsmen rushed forward to clear away the common folk tailing their wagon. While House Bloomrush had an entire regiment in Re Bloomrusher, they could only secure the most important parts of the city. No, it was more accurate that they only cared to secure the most important parts of the city. The main plaza, which contained the most important civilian offices, including those of the merchant and adventurer guilds, was one such locale. Their surroundings abruptly transitioned from the burnt-out shells of workshops, warehouses, and apartments that characterized most of the lower city to the well-kept stone offices of the main plaza. The multitude of people trying to shelter inside the ruins of their homes was similarly absent, replaced by a handful of household retainers and well-dressed merchants going about their business. Reed turned their wagon in the direction of a building with the sign of the Adventurer Guild hanging above its entrance, which occupied the plaza's north end. "I don't get it," the woodsman said. "How are we getting around the city so smooth?" "What do you mean?" Liam asked. Reed stole a sidelong glance at a pair of armsmen posted along their path, waiting to pass them before he spoke again. "This is Re Bloomrusher, ain't it? You always hear stories about people minding their own business being shaken down and such." Liam hadn't personally heard those stories, but he had no reason to believe the woodsman was lying. He was also pretty sure he had the answer to his question. "All those stories you hear are probably from people on the wrong side," Liam said. "The wrong side?" Claire frowned. "I've mentioned it a few times," Liam told the woodsman. "Lady Beaumont has, as well. You're a part of the aristocratic establishment now." Well, Reed and his gang were born into the establishment as members of tenant households, but they left it for a while when they worked for the Eight Fingers. To top it off, you're all retainers of the Countess. That means you're part of the collective face of House Beaumont, which is sworn to House Bloomrush. Does it truly mean that much?" the maid asked. "Of course it does," Liam answered. The power of the nobility comes from the united front they put up against threats to that power. House Bloomrush's current priority is to rebuild the city, and they need the support of their vassals to do it. That's why Lady Beaumont went along with the special reconstruction levy. By declaring her support for House Bloomrush has to treat her as a friend, and that makes things a lot easier for us while the city's completely under their control. If they don't, she can use their treatment to justify withdrawing her support, and that would affect how the other houses in the territory interact with Lord Reginald. Your explanation is giving me a headache, Reed said. So, basically, House Bloomrush is treating us friendly 'cause we're going along with their plans, and they won't try anything funny for now 'cause that might screw 'em. Pretty much, Liam replied. Also, since we're on House Bloomrush's side, their enemies are our enemies, and nobles will continue to compete with one another in ways that won't rock the boat. Right. Didn't I just mention this is giving me a headache? You know, for someone who grew up in some shithole of a town, you sure know a lot about this stuff. They don't even suspect you're not one of them. I guess it does seem strange, Liam admitted. I guess a lot of my work involves nobles in some way. Maybe that's why I got this assignment. It wasn't just a product of his work experience, of course. Ijania's training included how to infiltrate all sorts of organizations for any conceivable mission he might undertake. Then there was the fact that he had just so happened to fall into the laps of 4 big sisters who were all noblewomen. The wagon slowed as it approached the front of the Adventurer Guild. A quick scan of their surroundings revealed more than one set of armsmen and several groups of plainclothes men looking curiously in their direction. Not in the front, Liam said. We don't know how long this will take. Taking up the front for too long might annoy people. All right. Reed guided the wagon into a side street. Liam noted the annoyed expressions in the plaza as their vehicle disappeared around the corner. Bring us closer to the back entrance, Liam said. There's a back entrance? Reed asked. It should be in that alley up ahead, Liam answered. Big buildings always have at least one utility entrance. Were those folks watching us that big of a deal? Who knows, Liam shrugged. The point is we need to make people work for their information. Set a couple of men at the entrance to the plaza, 2 at the entrance to the alley, and 8 to block the side leading to the rest of the city. Don't get too close to the armsmen there. Everyone else can loiter around the wagon to block any distant views of our cargo. Remember the faces of anyone that still tries to figure out what we're carrying despite our setup. What if a patrol comes around? Then they come around. Don't give them any excuses to inspect our stuff. Oh, and don't feather any thief-takers that show up on the rooftops. The positioning of their escort implied that they were wary of the riff-raff sticking their noses in House Beaumont's business. Practically speaking, it kept almost anyone from observing them without interacting with the woodsmen. Their only weakness was observation from above. As Reed went to carry out his instructions, Liam turned to Claire, who was visibly steeling herself for her task. Ready to go? Liam asked. No, Claire answered. I've never done something this big before. It's a routine thing, Liam told her. The Adventurer Guild staff will have done it thousands of times. But I haven't done it at all. Liam held out his hand to the nervous maid. She wouldn't let go after he helped her down, so they ended up going into the guild's main entrance hand in hand. To Liam's chagrin, those within didn't miss their awkward entrance. He shook his hand free to pull back the hood of his mantle. Claire followed suit. There are more people here than I thought there'd be. There were no adamantite-ranked individuals, of course, as Blue Rose was based in the capital and Red Drop operated in the northwest. He couldn't see any orichalcum tags either, but there were at least 4 Mithril teams present and 24 lower-ranked teams sitting at the tables and benches furnishing the hall. Judging by their visible equipment, every team was specialized for operations on the densely forested frontier. At least one member of each team casually eyed their progress through the building. Representatives from House Beaumont. Welcome. How may the Adventurer Guild assist you? It took a moment to realize that the smiling receptionist at the front counter was addressing him. Well, that was a stupid oversight. Claire was officially the only member of the Countess' civilian staff, but the receptionist didn't know that. Since Liam had come along with her, he had become the footman in charge of conducting House Beaumont's business. "We have materials to assess and sell," Liam said. "Our wagon is parked near the alley." "Understood," the receptionist replied. "I must inform you that the Adventurer Guild charges a service fee for both the assessment of goods and acting as a neutral participant facilitating sales to the relevant parties. Those parties may also demand a fee depending on how difficult your requests are to fulfill. Does House Beaumont find this acceptable?" "Have the fees changed since the fire?" Liam asked. "No." "Very well," Liam said. "We'll be waiting outside." Back outside, they found that the drizzle that had accompanied them on their trip to the Adventurer Guild had intensified into a downpour that sent streams of water pouring off the tiled rooftops. It was a blessing that greatly reduced visibility, but no one appeared to be particularly pleased about it. Liam hoped it would give them the excuse to move their stuff out of sight entirely. "That receptionist seemed prickly for some reason," Claire said. "Did I do something wrong?" "Probably not," Liam replied. "That's just how the Adventurer Guild is. They insist on being recognized as an independent organization, so they act like they're the ones in control whenever they can." "It just felt rude to me," the maid said. "It doesn't matter so long as we get what we came for," Liam said. If he were to guess, the nature of the Azalisian marches also influenced the behavior of the Adventurer Guild. The way that the receptionist addressed them suggested that they expected trouble from House Beaumont if they gave them any wiggle room whatsoever. Whether that was because they had a history with them or it was due to their experience with the local aristocrats in general, he couldn't tell. "What happened?" Reed asked. "The receptionist was just being uptight," Liam answered. "We are waiting for them to send someone to us now. Anything interesting going on out here?" The woodsman glanced at the eaves overhead. "We had a fellow in Bloomrush colors watching us from the roof over there," Reed said. "He made himself scarce when it started to pour. What a lazy guy." If that was the quality of his opposition, then he had little to fear. He had fully expected teams of experienced agents to contend with since he was dealing with one of Re-Estize's great nobles. Then again, considering the amount of cost-cutting House Bloomrush displayed, it might have been an overestimation on his part. "Someone's comin'," one of Reed's men called out. A minute later, a middle-aged man adorned in eye-catching finery came from the direction of the plaza, sheltered by a parasol being carried by a boy slightly older than Liam. The rain failed to wash away the scent of perfume that preceded the pair. "Pierre Alignou," the middle-aged man said as he stuck out his hand. The man was clearly addressing Liam, so he took his hand and gave it a firm shake. "Liam. House Beaumont. A pleasure to meet you, Mr. Liam. And you, Mr. Alignou. The weather's taken a turn for the worse, so would you prefer to continue our business inside?" "Took the words right out of my mouth," Pierre grinned. "I was born and raised here, but the rain's still a bit much for me." "Then I'll have my people move the goods once you secure a private room in the Adventurer Guild," Liam said. "I'll send my apprentice to guide you to the back entrance once we're ready," Pierre said. With that, Pierre and his apprentice rushed back up the way they came. Reed frowned at their retreating backs. "That guy's a merchant," the woodsman said. "I thought they're supposed to be our enemies, or is he a smuggler?" "I don't think smugglers wear so much perfume that you could track them by scent alone," Liam said. "That guy's probably from the Merchant Guild. I doubt the guilds would approve of him dealing with us. The Adventurer Guild probably chose a guy they knew would be willing to break the rules, and that guy knows other guys who will also break the rules. That'll probably cost us extra, but they're the ones who will be in trouble if they get caught." "So, a smuggler?" Liam smiled despite himself. "Pretty much," he said. "The difference is that House Bloomrush would probably confiscate this cargo if they caught someone smuggling it. The guilds might send assassins instead." "That can't be true," Claire shivered. "Why would anyone be killed over something like this?" "Well, if you consider what's going on right now," Liam said. Breaking solidarity is basically treason. Traitors are executed, yeah? The pitter-patter of the rain filled the silence as everyone stared at him. Was it something that he said? Much to everyone's relief, Liam's read on Pierre Alignou proved to be accurate. The merchant asked no questions, made no comments, and most importantly of all, he paid in coin. Negotiations were straightforward, with Alignou simply offering them a price that he claimed was fair considering their circumstances. Liam's appraisal abilities as a rogue similarly gave him a sense of what was fair, but most with those abilities understood that it was relative to some unknown scale of value that did not directly reflect real prices. It took familiarity with local markets to figure that part out and, while a merchant could be quite quick at it, Liam hadn't had remotely enough time in the city. The best he could do was keep Alignou from cheating them outright. Intimidation might have been an option, but Liam wasn't sure whether the merchant would complain to the Adventurer Guild in retaliation. At the end of their bargaining, partially to distract him from the sight of Claire awkwardly fumbling bags of coin into their iron-bound strongbox, Liam went to speak with Alignou. "Would you like us to help deliver these goods to your accommodations?" Liam asked. "We just arrived in the city yesterday and I'd like to hear more about what's been going on." "Would you be so kind?" Alignou said. "It would save us the trouble of hiring a wagon and the mercenaries required to guard it." "Just to be clear," Liam said, "I didn't mean to say that House Beaumont was offering security forces for the duration of your stay." "Yes, of course. I will be leaving the city as soon as possible, preferably by way of the harbor. The gods permitting, I'll be in Re-Uruval in less than a week." "Do you need to stop anywhere in the city along the way?" Liam asked. "No. I've already checked out of my room at the inn and it's best for the both of us if I didn't report this transaction to the Merchant Guild." "Right." The merchant's eagerness to leave was palpable. Liam instructed Reed to get everything back on the wagon and helped an overly nervous Claire move the strongbox back into its compartment under the driver's seat. The street outside looked exactly as they had left it, save for the insufficient drainage leaving a layer of water that submerged the cobblestones. "Does it ever stop?" Claire complained as they left the main plaza behind them. "I heard it was even worse along the coast," Alignou said. "The farmers up there usually fear the frost that comes around occasionally, but the rain's just as bad." "Will it be as bad as people are acting?" Liam asked. "Why do you think I'm getting out of here?" Alignou answered. "This place was going to turn into hell before the fire. Now, only a miracle will save this place. Those are in short supply around here if you haven't noticed. House Bloomrush will be standing on a mountain of corpses by spring." He didn't seem to care that the common folk were within earshot of their procession. They were starting to look like the citizens of Hobans, yet had only begun their journey to the depths of desperation. Then again, House Bloomrush was far more willing to resort to violent suppression than the nobles of the Holy Kingdom. Liam couldn't tell whether that would help or harm things as the situation steadily deteriorated. "Shouldn't it be possible to import food from abroad?" "It's too late," Alignou said. "Ardland will have suffered from the same weather that we have, not that they're much for farming. The Holy Kingdom was invaded well into the spring, so they'll be suffering their own food shortages. Shipping food in from further down the coast will take months." "What about the Empire?" Liam said. "The nearest imperial port is only a few days away from Re-Uruval, isn't it?" The merchant gave him a strange look. "No one crosses the Azalizia Mountains and lives," he told him. "That includes trying to go around the range by sea. Frost dragons, frost giants, and sea monsters have kept that route sealed for centuries." "I see," Liam nodded. "I wasn't aware of that. The maps make it look so close." "You are not the first to see it that way, Mr. Liam," Alignou chuckled, "nor will you be the last. Trade from the northern coast can only go through the Ardland archipelago and into the Gyre. Re-Uruval steals everything decent coming from down south, so it's mostly unprofitable for Re-Uruval." "In that case," Liam said, "where are you going to go?" "Anywhere in Reastize is out of the question," the merchant replied. "The whole country's going to look like this in a few months and it'll only get worse. Ardland's the best bet for anyone with the means to get there. What's Ardland like? Different, Alinu said. The place looks like an untamed wilderness save for a few developed areas. Damn cold, too. Cold and wet. You have to know where the human communities are to live comfortably. I figure I'll work up there until the dust settles down here. That might take a few years. The merchant glanced in Liam's direction a few times, as if trying to gauge his reaction. Liam was pretty sure he knew what the man was looking for. The Draconic Kingdom's aristocrats found the willingness of merchants to abandon their homes in the face of danger revolting, and that perspective should have been nearly identical in Riest's eyes. I don't understand how you can stomach doing that, Liam said. Shouldn't you do whatever you can to help our people survive? There's plenty in it for you, as well. The rising food prices will make you unimaginably wealthy if you can secure a reliable trade route. Don't give me that. You can't expect any profit from feeding a ravenous mob. Any shipment of food that comes in will be overrun and ransacked. This guy really has no faith in others. Unless they were suffering from some kind of problem that messed with their heads, people were generally grateful when they received what they needed. In times of crisis, humans banded together to survive. Alinu's behavior, on the other hand, was something he had seen all too often. The man was all too happy to profit off of the community and then separated himself from it in times of trouble, claiming it was no business of his and he would be back when he could profit off of it again. Liam wouldn't have been surprised if he didn't even see the soon-to-be victims of the impending famine as people at all. They were at best potential thieves and threats to his person, undeserving of even the tiniest bit of empathy. Was letting him sail away to safety just? Legally speaking, he wasn't doing anything wrong, but Liam found his behavior morally reprehensible. Those who acted like him tended to be rewarded for it, encouraging others to follow suit and fill the world with self-centered individuals. Liam released a long sigh, misting the air in front of his hood. He couldn't do anything that would put his assignments at risk, so all he could do was pray that Alinu eventually got what he deserved. Looks like trouble, Reed said. Ahead of them, the waterfront was packed with people. Most faced the river, or rather the ships moored at the piers. Alinu clicked his tongue. See what I mean? He said, it's already started. I don't see any ships being overrun, Liam noted. It'll happen eventually, the merchant said. We need to force our way through before this gets any worse. They're just standing there. By the looks of it, the waterfront had become a major encampment. Shelters formed out of the debris from the fire had been raised in and around the ruins of destroyed warehouses. Women and children huddled together in their makeshift homes while the men lined up along the wharf, calling out to the ships and their crews. One section grew particularly loud as a ship emerged from the rain to approach its berth. What's your cargo? How many hands do you need? Taking on any crew? The men pressed in, jostling a uniformed official and his escorts. Pained cries sounded out as the armsmen pushed back, using clubs to strike at any limbs or heads that came too close. Sabanya. The official shouted, Sabanya. Where in the gods' names are you, you lazy brute? Reed's men formed a picket as the scene grew increasingly chaotic. Both Claire and Alinu looked around themselves nervously, rising to stand on their seats. Reed. Liam called out, don't hurt anyone if you can help it. Are you mad? The merchant's panicked voice rose above the din, put down any of these animals if they threaten to come close. In a single, swift motion, Liam pulled himself onto the wagon and grabbed Alinu by the collar. The man let out an undignified cry as he was thrown onto the tarp covering his cargo. Why you? You dare? Shut up. Liam said as he checked their surroundings, are you trying to turn all these people against us? Just lay low and let us get you to where you need to go. The merchant glared up at Liam resentfully, but said nothing in the end. Liam looked over to Reed, who had thankfully not acted on Alinu's words. I don't think we can get out like this, the woodsman said. You're probably right, Liam replied. We're going to have to wait until things settle down. Thankfully, The crowd's attention was directed at the newly arrived ship and the official standing between it and them. All Reed and his men had to do for the time being was redirect anyone who came too close with a firm hand. Liam's head snapped over to focus on the sound of a scream north of their position. The scream was joined by shouts of pain and panic. Moments later, the crowd shifted to flee from some unseen threat. As the people melted away to hide in the shadows of the ruined buildings along the waterfront, the distinct form of a Bloomrush knight appeared at the head of a cavalry squadron. "Clear out, you vermin!" the knight thundered from atop his dark warhorse. "Get back in your holes." As if to make his point, he slashed open the back of a man who had stumbled while trying to flee. The man's tortured cries only earned him a kick into the river with a steel-shod boot. The official didn't miss a step as he came forward to berate the knight. "Sabanya," he fumed, "you are supposed to prevent these parasites from swarming the waterfront in the first place. Where have you been?" "Reed," Liam said in a low voice, "let's move." "Move where?" the woodsman asked. Liam looked over his shoulder to where Alinu still lay prone atop the tarp. "It's not as if I had any time to make arrangements," the merchant said. "I intended to board the first departing ship we came across." "Then which ship is that?" Liam asked. Alinu pushed himself up to his hands and knees and crawled back to the driver's seat. He wiped his face clear of rain several times as he scanned the piers. "That one," the merchant pointed upriver. "The one that's sitting low on the water." He didn't single out one of the many barges moored along the waterfront, but a ship not unlike the Na that sailed between Warden's Vale and the upper reaches. Reed urged their horses onto the street, seemingly as eager as Liam to dump the merchant and his cargo as quickly as possible. Liam scanned the faces of the destitute citizens as they watched the passing wagon. He couldn't tell if Alinu's callous words and the brutality of Sabanya had incidentally also painted House Beaumont as a target of public resentment. As they waited for Alinu to negotiate passage, the harbourmaster caught up with them. He eyed the wagon and Reed's men before walking past them to address Liam. "What business does House Beaumont have here?" the harbourmaster asked. "We sold a few odds and ends and offered to help deliver them," Liam replied. "That may have been a mistake. Do incidents like that happen often?" "They are a recent occurrence, I assure you," the harbourmaster replied. "These fools have gotten it into their heads that incoming ships are their only hope for relief. Nothing could be further from the truth. The North is in an even worse situation than we are." "Then why not say so?" "Oh, I have," the harbourmaster sighed, "but people believe what they want to believe. They deserve every bit of what's coming to them. I'm afraid the aftermath of this disaster will put the marches behind come summer." "Lord Reginald has the situation well in hand," the harbourmaster told them, "and that will remain to be the case with House Beaumont's continued support." "Have we heard anything from the other houses yet?" Liam asked. "The nearest fiefs are at least a day away by horse," the harbourmaster answered. "The nobles in residence sent couriers to contact their territories, so we should expect some kind of response by tomorrow or the day after." "No one sent anyone to check on the city?" The old man's expression soured. "No," he said. "I can only assume that this cursed weather has left the countryside ignorant of our plight. Lord Reginald has sent as many knights as we can afford to inform the territories. I doubt we'll see any sort of organized response from them for at least a week." "Is food being delivered from the nearby towns?" "Yes, of course," the harbourmaster replied. "Some of the more hysterical citizens may claim that mass starvation is mere days away, but pay no mind to them. Moving so much grain takes time to prepare and deliver, but it is on its way." "I see," Liam said. "I will inform my lady of what you've shared with us. Perhaps she can help encourage the other houses to cooperate with Lord Reginald." Liam received a nod in response and the harbourmaster turned away. "One hand washes the other, I suppose." The man made corruption look so natural that Liam had no doubt his entire career was marked with similar interactions. In return for the additional support Liam implied, the harbourmaster didn't bother inspecting their cargo. Thus far, Rebloom Russia appeared to be a city where one's place in the grand scheme of things superseded rule of law. Once they were done with Alinyu, they returned to the Beaumont estate. The Countess appeared in the doorframe to welcome them back. "How did it go?" she asked. "I can't say it went exactly according to plan, my lady," Liam answered, "but we got what we needed." The young noblewoman placed a gloved hand over her breast, breathing a sigh of relief before instructing them to come inside. Reed brought the strongbox into the manor with a couple of his men. A weighty thud sounded as they lowered their burden to the polished wooden floor at the base of the central stairwell. "The merchant we negotiated with assumed that I was one of your footmen," Liam told the Countess, "so Claire didn't get to do much. We followed your instructions, though. The coin is divided between platinum, gold, and silver." "Excellent," Lady Beaumont said. "Let's get this thing up to my solar. We can start distributing everyone's pay after that." "Pay?" Reed's voice perked up. "Yes, pay," the young noblewoman smirked. "Our accounts must be settled so I can figure out where we can go from there." Liam watched with a bemused expression as Reed's men picked up the strongbox again and whisked it up the stairs. Another thud sounded as it was placed on the floor of the solar office. The Countess unlocked and opened the container, transferring the sacks of coinage within to the broad oak desk dominating the room before sitting on the leather chair behind it. Everyone waited quietly while she sorted through the contents of each bag, recording her findings in a leather-bound ledger. She looked up from her work after nodding to herself. "Claire," she said. The recently hired maid gingerly made her way to stand in front of the Countess' desk. Everyone watched as 6 gold coins were counted out on the desktop, followed by 60 silver coins. "This is your winter pay, Claire," Lady Beaumont said. "Given your current level of training, please understand that I can only justify the salary of a junior household member." Claire was too busy staring at the stacks of coins before her to answer. Going by what Liam had seen of her work in Beaumont Town, it was an amount that would have likely taken her years to save up. "Claire." "Why yes, my lady." Thank you, my lady." The Countess watched with a slight frown as her maid swept the coins into her apron and hobbled out of the room. In her excitement, Claire had missed the empty purse that was sitting right beside her pay. Lady Beaumont cleared her throat. "Mr. Reed." Reed stepped forward to stand before the Countess, looking just as apprehensive as Claire had been. The woodsman's eyes threatened to fall out of their sockets as the same amount was placed before him. "That can't be right," Reed said. "It's the standard quarterly salary of a sergeant in any armed retinue," Countess Beaumont said. "Quarterly? A fief's budget is divided by the seasons," the young noblewoman replied. "Nearly everything is done by the quarter." "That wasn't what I meant, my lady," Reed said. "I was thinking this was a bit too much. Am I to understand that you desire a pay cut, Mr. Reed?" The woodsman snatched the coins off the table and fled. The Countess called for the next man, who was paid the equivalent of a journeyman's wage as an almsman. Liam remained standing at Lady Beaumont's shoulder as she called people in one by one to hand them their pay. As with Claire and Reed, everyone expressed their shock at how much compensation they received for their services, but the amounts felt normal to Liam. The houses in Robley followed a similar schedule and it wasn't much different in the Sorcerer's Kingdom. He supposed it would seem excessive to someone who lived out in the countryside where everything was much cheaper, so a taste of city life would probably make things feel more reasonable. Once they were done, Liam helped the Countess put away her strongbox. Despite paying roughly 70 men their quarterly salary, 4/5 of her total proceeds remained. "What now?" Liam asked. "We'll be visiting with several houses that House Beaumont is friendly with," the Countess said as she turned her head to look out of the nearest window. "We've still a few hours until lunch, which should be enough time for one." "So you're going to speak with a house that focuses on agriculture?" "Several houses," Lady Beaumont replied. "Copses supply most of the fuel for everyday living in farming villages, but this early winter will have them looking to import the difference. But the Azalesian marches are mostly forestry and mining," Liam noted. Doesn't that mean you'll be competing for the limited food grown here? Yes, the Countess nodded. We must use our fortunate timing to secure the deals we need before the houses complicate matters. Then what happens to the other fiefs? Liam asked. The young noblewoman looked away from the window, remaining silent for several moments. Liam, she said, you are a kind man, but please understand that my obligations as a noble lie first and foremost with my land and its subjects. The unfortunate fact of the matter is that there isn't enough to go around, and I will do whatever I can to ensure that my fief survives the winter. Doesn't that apply to everyone else, as well? Liam said, if every noble is willing to do whatever it takes, then that means they're also willing to do things like attack caravans and raid across their borders for food. Lady Beaumont turned pale and swallowed. That's a possibility, but... I don't know, the young noblewoman replied in a small voice. Once the shipments get onto the river, they should be safe enough, but I believe we will need to bring in more armsmen. As for border raids, the only way to combat them would be to raise a levy. The people should understand the need for an organized defense. A troubled expression fell over the young noblewoman. She probably didn't expect to be dealing with a potential war against her neighbors. Anyways, she said, the sooner we secure these deals, the more time we'll have to make the appropriate arrangements for everything. Will you accompany me, Liam? Sure, Liam said. Who are we seeing first? Lady Beaumont picked up a sheet of paper from the desk, glancing over it before replying. Out of all the men I sent to call ahead, 2 of them were chased away in an aggressive manner. We shall be visiting those manors first. Reed's men didn't look anything like household staff, so it wasn't a surprise that they didn't receive a warm welcome. Why those 2 first? Liam asked. The mistreatment of my men grants us a superior bargaining position, the Countess answered. I won't lean too much on it, just enough that I can push for them to deal with me. That seemed like a lot to Liam, but, then again, he wasn't a noble. The things Lady Beaumont discussed already felt way too big for someone like him. Out in the Solars' drawing room, they found Reed and Claire sitting on the couches with glum looks on their faces. It was in stark contrast to the excitement they expressed over their pay. Claire brightened as she rose to speak with Liam, but her smile evaporated when Lady Beaumont called her away to help her prepare for their outing. Liam took a seat across from Reed, frowning at his frown. What's wrong? Liam asked. We got paid, Reed answered, but there's nothing to buy. City's burned down, yeah? Did you want to get something special? Sorta. Me and the boys wanted to celebrate our payday with a drink. Then we realized there's nothing to drink. That's all you wanted? A drink? What's wrong with that? Liam ran a critical eye over the woodsman, who had laid out his pay on the table between them. I don't think you understand why you're being paid what you are, Liam said. Being a retainer isn't the same as being a laborer. What's that supposed to mean? Reed asked. This is professional pay, Liam answered. Like any other professional, you're supposed to use it to improve your effectiveness as a professional. I don't follow. Think of how artisans build up their careers, Liam said. As journeymen work themselves up to become masters, they buy tools, rent workstations, look for opportunities to train, and eventually look to be a master of their own workshop. Being an armsman is similar. Your tools are your equipment and you're being paid to better yourself through training and work experience. No one will fault you for indulging in a few luxuries, but the expectation is that you continue to grow for the sake of House Beaumont. But I already have equipment, Reed said, and what we do looks like it's good enough. Liam silently shook his head. It was all too easy to forget what followers of the Four were like, especially when they had spent most of their time together. Is that what you want, then? Liam asked, just good enough? What's wrong with that? You'll probably have a family one day, Liam said, especially now that you can reliably provide for one. Wouldn't you want the best for your family? What about your heir? The woodsman's face screwed up at the latter. My heir? I don't get why you're so surprised, Liam said. You are a retainer of House Beaumont, a part of the aristocratic establishment. Loyalty and lineage matter. When your son grows up, chances are he'll also be an armsman because of your history with House Beaumont. Right now, the legacy you're leaving him is an old bow, some well-worn leather armor, and a handful of drinking stories. You sure have a way of making things all heavy. It feels heavy because it's important, Liam told him. If I were in your boots, I'd be upgrading all the equipment I can. Not only because it helps me perform better, but it improves my heir's chances of survival and achieving success. I train as much as possible and learn all the skills and martial arts that I can. That stuff can be passed down to my heir, as well. If I do really well, I could even afford to groom multiple heirs. Being a retainer doesn't require a title, after all. Reed leaned back in his seat, pursing his lips as he considered Liam's words. Don't suppose all that improvement comes with more pay? Of course it does, Lady Beaumont's voice sounded from her bedroom door. Securing talent is a perpetual challenge for any organization. For an aristocratic house, establishing a relationship with an elite cadre of loyal families is especially prized. If you do as Liam suggests, even knighthood is not out of the question should you or one of your descendants prove their mettle. This of course applies to anyone in the service of House Beaumont. I guess I should start taking things more seriously, then. I look forward to the results, Mr. Reed, the young noblewoman smiled. For now, however, we have some friends to visit.